Connor decides to call in the troops and summons the Titans via his communicator. And they bring everybody, even the Doom Patrol and the JSA. The stuff with the Spectre is resolved quickly as we see him get bonded to a new host, one of the main characters of the title Gotham Central, but back to Prime. And the infamous moments. Prime accidentally punches off the head of former Titan member Panther. He even screams, crying that he didn't mean to do that. Further still, murdering Baby Wildebeest, Bushido, and ripping off the arm of Risk from the Dan Jurgens Teen Titans group. So, yeah. Let's talk about this event for a moment, and what it's really about beyond just a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Nostalgia can be toxic. Now bear in mind, I did not say that it is toxic, but that it can be toxic. This assumption that because we have pleasant memories of something, that it was always good all the time. A desire to get that back ignores all the good that's come since then, as well as all the bad stuff that was there too. And it poisons you, making you more susceptible to deception, to your own greed. Who's to say that your own past is more important than someone else's future? And because you want something that may not have been real at all, the farther the goalpost gets, because you can't really reclaim it. So it just gets worse and worse, and you get greedier and more desperate for it, because what you really want is never going to come. Until in the very end, you become the thing you hated in the first place. You become more concerned with chasing some imaginary feeling that you forget where you are, and that you can create real, attainable goals right now. To this mindset, the past is more important than the future. The Earth 2 Superman thinks that he can reclaim everything by bringing back something from his past. Superboy Prime exemplifies this most of all, and in issue 4, his character works. Because it's an actual tragedy. Someone who thinks he's reclaiming something that's his, when of course it isn't his. He's too fixated on this ideal version of the world that he can't believe that anything else is possible. The reason why I mock Superboy Prime and other works is because he stopped being this cautionary tale and instead became a farce, a method for the writers, Jeff Johns in particular, to complain about angry fans who didn't like his work. Oh, they don't like change! They only want something from their past! But as I've said before, Jeff Johns is guilty of this too. The man has never met a retcon he didn't like. He likes to pretend plot points happened a certain way because it suits the story he wants to tell. Connor Kent is a perfect example of this. Jeff Johns is the one who introduced the retcon that Connor was also a clone of Lex Luthor, because it served the story he wanted to tell. He is guilty of the exact same toxic nostalgia, wanting to recreate a world from his past by sacrificing the past of everybody else. And sometimes that world was better. Hal Jordan's turn to evil was a bad idea, and fixing that was the right call. The difference between Superboy Prime and Jeff Johns is that Jeff Johns is capable of fixing those mistakes while not sacrificing everything else that went along the way. Bear in mind, when he brought back Hal Jordan, he didn't kill Kyle Rayner just because, well, you gotta clear the way for Hal. It's more about repairing the future rather than changing the past. Sure, he still screws it up on occasion. Prime himself is the best example of that. But he's usually intent on serving the larger picture. Superboy Prime, however, is trapped in this sense of entitlement. His reality, his sacrifice is the only thing that matters to him. He feels he deserves it all, and doesn't care who he has to hurt to get it back. And despite his constant proclamations, it's because he's not Superman. Superman is a promise to serve the world, all of humanity, hell, all of life itself. He puts the world before himself because that is the man he's grown to be. Superboy Prime, though, well, he's a teenager who suddenly got superpowers, lost his entire planet, got shoved into a glass prison with 2 old people and a weird creepy guy who was technically only a few days old, and he gets to watch everybody else on Earth get the happy ending he thinks he was supposed to get. Dude's got issues. Infinite Crisis is trying to be critical of this mindset, but it also has no answer to the rightful criticisms that mindset lobbed at the DC universe. It has gotten too dark. The heroes have done morally questionable things that have ended up hurting themselves and others. And while it's still shaking its finger at all that, It revels in those same elements. Excessive violence, death, the hero's failing. All of it is personified in a teenager bawling his eyes out while literally ripping people apart and screaming, "You're ruining everything!"